Hi, Cole from Geek Life Gaming here, bringing you the first of many Geek Life Gaming deck techs. Today we're going to be focusing on Card Fight Vanguard, and the deck that we'll be working with today will be Megacolony. Let's get into it. For our starting grade 0, we'll be running Machining Worker Ant. Grade 0, 6k beater. It's auto skill. When rode upon, draw a card. Pretty self-explanatory. Next up for our triggers, we have 4 Shelter Beetle, and we have 4 Sharp Nail Scorpio, bringing us to a total of 8 critical. I like to run 8 critical. Works out really well in the long game, and sometimes in the early game you can check a critical and get off to an early start. Next up, we have our 4 heal triggers. The Medical Battler Ranplee. And then following that, we have our 4 draw triggers, which are also our perfect guards for this deck. Paralyzed Madonna. I like to run this over the grade 1 because it frees up slots for grade 1s, which in this deck are the ones that I've selected are very important. So that's why we use Paralyzed Madonna. Next up for our grade 1s, we run 1 of the Small Captain Butterfly Officer. I only like to run 1 of this simply because its skill is okay, but in the late game it might not be too effective because in the late game your opponent's going to be guarding for a lot more, and so it's better in the early game, which is why I only run 1 of them. Next up we have 4 Machining Hornet. This is one of your most critical pieces in the deck early game because it will search out your grade 3s. Its skill is when its attack or the attack that it boosts hits a Vanguard, you look at 6 cards from the top of your deck, you reveal up to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. If you put it into your hand and this unit is on the rear guard circle, you put this unit into your soul. And the soul is also going to be a little important, but not so much with grade 1s, and you'll see what I mean here in a minute. But that is why we run 4 of him. Next up, we have 4 Phantom Blacks. Very good utility card for both the early and late game. Only while it's on the rear guard. When this unit boosts, you can discard a card from your hand and until the end of that battle. This unit gets plus 6,000 power, and your opponent cannot call normal units from hand to guard. Now this card combos very well with a grade 3 that you'll see here in a bit, and that is why we run 4 of him. For our rounding out our grade 1s, we have Spiteful Hopper. Really good card. I enjoy using this guy a lot. When placed on the rear guard, you can Soul Blast 1. That's where that soul comes in handy. And one of your other units can get 6,000 power until the end of turn. Also, if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, you countercharge 1. Counter blasts are very important in this deck with the with your main grade 3 that you're going to be riding. He's a pretty hefty counter blaster. But yeah, so that's why we run Spiteful Hopper. He's a really easy counter charger. And Soul Blast, so you can stack up your soul. And he's, I think, one of the few things in the deck that actually uses Soul Blast. And that's 4 of him, and that's rounding out our grade 1s with a total of 13. Now on to the grade 2s. I like to run 4 Water Gangs. When he's on the rear guard, when he stands at any point, you can counterblast 1 and put Water Gang into your soul. There's more soul for you. And draw 2 cards. He's really fantastic. Nets you great hand advantage, and he's a 9k swinger. The one thing about him though is once your opponent is used to playing against him, they're going to be targeting that Water Gang. So sometimes when you need a hand, you have to burn through your hand a bit to draw into some new cards. So it's a risk, but I like taking it because it pays off a lot for me. For our second grade 2, we have Bloody Hercules. So on the rear guard, when he's placed, you can Soul Blast 1, and this unit will get 6,000 power until the end of the turn. And then when he's on the Vanguard or the rear guard, when his attack hits, you can countercharge 1, and one of your units gets 6,000 until end of turn. That is very useful, especially if your opponent can't risk taking the Vanguard, taking the hit to their Vanguard. in the late game, you can swing with him on your rear guard and net some counter charges off of him. And then on top of that, he can also power up any of your units that have still yet to attack. That's why we run 3 of him, because our last grade 2 is also very important. 3, Machining Mantis. He's very similar to the Machining Hornet, the grade 1. He nets you grade 3s early and late game. But because he takes a counterblast, I only run 3 of him. And so on Vanguard or Rearguard, when he's placed, you can counterblast 1 and look at 6 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 grade 3 from among them, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck, and this unit gets plus 6,000 until power until end of turn. Very good card, but because he is a counterblast 1, that's why I keep him at 3. And there's easy ways to recycle him. If he ever goes into your soul, there's easy ways that you can recycle him, and that'll be in your grade 3s, which are coming up next. But that rounds out our grade 2s to a total of 10. Now for our grade 3s. For what I consider to be the boss of the deck, you have Machining Spark Hercules, and I'm a big fan of it. I managed to get an SVR of him, which is very, very pretty. You can tell the difference. There's the green background and the nice standout flavor text. But Machining Spark Hercules is going to be one of your greatest. When you ride him, you get your Protect Imaginary Gift, and he's got 2 abilities. They both can only be used once per turn. The first one is a Counterblast 2, which is where he's a little heavy on the Counterblast cost. You choose 5 of your rear guards, you stand them, and they get plus 5,000 power until end of turn. You choose all of your opponent's units, you rest them, and they get minus 5,000 power until the end of your opponent's next turn. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, well, you can't use him if your board's not full or your opponent's board isn't full. That isn't true with Vanguard. You can Counterblast 2, and even if you only have 1 other unit, you apply as much of the effect as possible. So no matter what, if you Counterblast 2 and you only have Spark Hercules, but your opponent has a full board, their full board will still be getting minus 5,000 until the end of their next turn. And then his other skill that makes him just a really, really nice unit, you can put a grade 2 or less rear guard into your soul, so that means your grade 2 or less has to be on the field. And then this unit gets plus 5,000 power until end of turn for each of your opponent's units and rest. So you can really see how that first skill combos well with that second skill, and Machining Spark Hercules does really well against Excel decks if they have a full field, or even just any normal deck. If they have a full field, he's netting anywhere from 25 to 35,000 every time you use that ability, and that's why we run 4 of him. Next, we have grade 3 Machining Stag Beetle. We only run 3 of him because we saved the last 3 slots for our next most important piece. Machining Stag Beetle, he's not too terrible. He doesn't have any Counterblast or Soul Blast or anything, so he's not too bad. Same thing, you get your Protect marker when you ride him, and on the Vanguard or Rearguard, when he's placed from your hand, you call up to 2 cards from your soul to Rearguard as rest. And if this unit was placed on Vanguard, this unit gets the original power of all the units called with this effect until the end of turn. So he's not too bad, as you can see. He can call stuff. I don't really like riding him on Vanguard, though. I prefer to save the Vanguard slot for our Machining Spark Hercules or our next grade 3. But I mean, yeah, he does get the increased power, and if you happen to be riding him for the 3rd or 4th grade 3 ride, you can call some grade 3s and get a lot of power, but he's a nice utility piece, but the power gain, I just don't think, with the other choices you have, I don't think he's as necessary as a Vanguard ride, unless absolutely necessary. But he's also the one that I was talking about. He can recycle your Machining Hornets and your Machining Mantises from your soul when you place him on either Vanguard or Rearguard. So he's a really nice tech piece. And finally, rounding out our grade 3s, we will be running 3 Death Warden Antlion. Now this guy combos really well with the Phantom Black, the grade 1 that we discussed earlier. He's a grade 3, so when you ride him, you get your Protect Force marker. And on the Vanguard or Rear Guard, when this unit attacks, you Soul Blast 1 grade 3, and you discard 2 cards from your hand. So he is a little hefty, but his ability is worth it. So when you do that, until the end of the battle that he is attacking and you activate this effect, this unit gets plus 10,000 power, plus 1 critical, so you're dealing more than 1 damage, and your opponent cannot call Sentinels from hand to guard. So if you combo this guy with our Phantom Black, your Death Warden Antlion prevents them from blocking with Sentinels. Your Phantom Black prevents them from calling with normal units, so they are forced to use any trigger units they have in their hand to block. And that gets rid of their big shields right away, or if they don't happen to have any, they can't block at all. I have played many a games where the Death Warden Phantom Black combo ended the game right there with 2 or 3 damage. So he's really, really nice. You can ride him as Vanguard or Rear Guard. I tend to like to use him as Rear Guard more if I can help it. I like to have my Machining Spark Hercules on the Vanguard, so that way I can swing with my Vanguard first, and if they protect it or I know I can't get through and I check criticals, I can throw those on Death Warden Antlion. It'll be that much more difficult for them to survive his attack. And that is our deck tech for the day. So if you have any suggestions, or you're wondering, or if you're wondering a little further about any choices that were made, leave it in the comments below, and we'll get back to you. Once again, this is Cole from Geek Life Gaming, and I'll be seeing you next time.